Hello, everybody. You are listening to Bass Tunes on KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine. I'm Ari. We're running at 199.9 watts. Today, if you can't tell, we're talking about Melvins and Melmet today. We're doing a double review of two albums that one I got into recently and the other I have loved for a while and been meaning to talk about. But I think they're similar. So rock out, let's get to it. All right, that's enough of that. Well, as I just said, we're reviewing Helmet and Melvins. Melvins first because it's Melmet. So let's start with Melvins, shall we? Who are Melvins? Well, if you don't know them, fair enough, because a lot of people don't, but a lot of people do. They're a rock band from Washington that formed in 1983, so they've been around for over 40 years now, and they've been making music, and so much of it. So much of it. And what's notable about them is that their early work has been said to influence the genres of grunge and sludge metal. The people in Washington coming on and checking their early work out, sort of slowly working into grunge, and then the huge grunge wave in the early 1990s with Nirvana and Soundgarten and Pearl Jamming. Those are accurate band names that I just said. But of course, I mean, you guys know grunge. You're listening to this station, right? You know that. So you know what I'm talking about. The consistent members for the band are Buzz Osborne, King Buzzo, who is the main guitarist and vocals, and Dale Crover, who does drums and I think backing vocals as well. Of course, these are the main two. Stuff like the bassist has changed, as every other band on the face of the planet does. But for the most part, they've actually been a three-piece, which is maybe a little surprising for hard rock. You always usually have like an extra guitarist or a vocalist without a guitar, that sort of stuff. But not for the Melvins. Although we've had different examples of the times when they've maybe gone a little farther than that. The band met in junior high/high school in Montesano, Washington. They all knew each other as kids. And, you know, kids are like, hey, let's make a band. I like this kind of music. Woo! So they started off playing, you know, Jimi Hendrix and the Who covers, and then moved over to hardcore punk. And, you know, it's written on their Wikipedia page that, you know, after that, they started to play slower and heavier than anyone else around them. They released their debut in 1986, which has been called the 6 Songs EP, although you might know it as 10 songs because I think it got reissued sometime after with 4 more songs. I almost didn't know how to do math then, so shout out to not being able to do math. And the reason why, and the thing I forgot to mention, is that Houdini is actually the first of 3 records on their main major label sort of span in their career, being signed to Atlantic Records. And if you've heard their music, you know, how can these guys be signed to a major label? Well, we got to thank Kurt Cobain for that. Kurt knew Buzz back in high school, and after Nevermind blew up and everyone wanted a piece of that grunge, whatever you want to call it, thing, after the reign of hard rock and glam metal and the more performative, quote-unquote, sort of styles and genres of rock and metal kind of died out in the mainstream, people were itching for this new angst-filled, quote-unquote, authentic. Obviously, nothing's obviously 100% authentic when it comes to this popular music, but you get the message. You know, flannel was in. It was time to get sad. Not always, but a good chunk of the time. I mean, listen to Super Unknown. You know what I'm talking about. But Cobain sort of vouched for them to labels, and as he did. I forgot it was either Buzz or The Interview. I saw an interview recently for this album, sort of the 30-year anniversary of it, sort of straight up saying, like, yeah, Cobain was acting like a bit of a mini A&R. Because people were like, hey, you're pretty popular. You know, people like you. We want more of you. So what can you get? And obviously, he tried to prop up some of the bands in the area. And that's always a noble thing. This is the first of 3 albums from Atlantic. The other 2 albums they would release on Atlantic Records are Stoner Witch and Stag. And these first 2 albums are probably their biggest. I think Houdini might be their best selling. It spawned their biggest song, I think, Honey Bucket, which has like nothing to do with the rest of the record, but it's still pretty good. The other one, Stoner Witch, I like it, but it's a lot more atmospheric and a bit weirder. You know, this one kind of feels like them trying to make an accessible record, Houdini specifically, at least a little bit more. But more on the band, they do a lot of different things. They've put out 26 albums since 1986, and there are a lot of different styles. They're known for being goofy and weird, bit of a sense of humor, always doing what they want and not really caring about what anyone thinks. And they're influenced from a variety of sources. You know, you got hardcore punk, slower, more doomy metal, Kiss. You know, they even cover Kiss on this record, Houdini, and it's a really good one. I didn't even know it was a cover because I don't really listen to Kiss at all. And then I put the original song on, and I was like, wow. I was like, wow, this cover is so much better. It's Going Blind, by the way, if you're curious. One album had multiple drummers of theirs, so they always try weird arrangements. I think they're either their last one or the one before their last, out of 26 albums, was a full acoustic covers album, which is very nice and very interesting. And as for their most well-known albums, I guess they're most talked about, and people say, where do I start with the band? A lot of them. But let's say Houdini, Stoner Witch, A Senile Animal from 2006, their earlier stuff like Ozma, Gluey Porch Treatments, Bullhead, and Lysol, which is also called self-titled, also called Lice-All, like head lice, because I guess the album was released and then copyright because of that certain air freshener brand didn't want to do with that. It's not available on all the streaming services. It's a 30-minute long track. It's on Archive, though, so, I mean, you can go on there. Yeah, it also got reissued on record, I think, recently under the new name Lice-All, right? It was also, Houdini was also co-produced by Kurt Cobain. There's a bit of an interesting story with that. The sort of infamous story of Melvins apparently having to fire Kurt Cobain. And in the interview, I think Buzz basically sort of was like, no, it's not like we just fired him. But it was sort of a mutual, like, this isn't going to work. Cobain wasn't showing up to the studio. I think he was having some tough times with substances around this time. And he goes into detail about that, not Cobain himself, but how much of an epidemic that specific substance is to a lot of people. So obviously, I think he treats it with good respect. But yeah, I will say though, he did some arrangements. I think he played on Sky Pup. I'd say he gave a pretty sort of important suggestion for the first song, which you heard because that was the first one I played. That was Hooch off his album, one of my favorites, and I'll explain that in a bit. But I guess more on the album, I like it a lot. That's all I can say. It's got their most popular songs, Honey Bucket being one of them, but as I said earlier, I don't think that song is a very good representation. The album is very, very varied. It's sometimes super slow and heavy, sludgy, trudging along for endless amounts of time with a repetitive riff like, why am I forgetting the name? Night Goat. Sometimes abrasive and fast, like, as I said, Honey Bucket. Other times sort of atmospheric and goofy, stuff like Sky Pup. Lizzie's interesting. Yeah, it's the classic, I guess, maybe grunge, I don't know what to call it, but like, Nevermind did it very well, where the verses are pretty quiet and the chorus goes as loud as humanly possible. And, I feel like that's a pretty big trend in a lot of artists, especially ones I like. That sort of alt rock, whatever you want to call it, sort of thing. But yeah, like that. I do find it strange, even now, that they got a 3-album deal with a major label. Their music comes off to me as sort of anti-commercial, anti-public opinion, not like messages and lyrics. I can't even tell a message half the time with these lyrics because they're notoriously incoherable. Like, you know what he's saying, but you don't know how to understand what meaning is there. But in the sense of they're just doing whatever they want and they're just living their lives and they got a big cult following, Maybe it's in the same bucket of weirdos like Primus, maybe. Obviously, they're very different. And, honestly, half the time you compare bands, you're just like, what are you doing? You don't know what you're talking about half the time. You're just talking to talk, as I do. But I do feel like this record is pretty accessible, at least some of the songs. Not as much as a lot of other bands, but it's doable, If you've heard some of the more heavier, grungy stuff, you could probably put this on for somebody and be like, hey, they're pretty good. I know someone, she doesn't like a lot of the metal I like, but she likes this album. Or more so stoner, which stuff like, what does my girlfriend like? Let's see here. I'm trying to make sure I got this right. Goose Freight Train and At the Stake. And those are both sort of slower, more atmospheric, sometimes heavy, but not too heavy. So, that makes sense. They got that for someone like her. I like the heavier, more trudging tracks. Hooch, Night Goat, Honey Bucket. Semi Straight's a really interesting one. I might actually play that one, even though it's not really a good representation. But then again, what song is a good representation? Maybe the opener? I say that's probably a fairly good representation of what you get. I don't know. As I said, these lyrics make no sense. Sometimes they literally had zero meaning, like the opener, Hooch. Osbourne said in an interview that he wrote these lyrics as sort of a work in progress like everyone does, or a lot of artists do. When you have the music and you want to write lyrics, but you're just sort of na-na-na-na-na-na, like you're humming along. Like, listen, I've listened to a lot of Kanye West leaks. Like, Kanye does that a lot, where you can, in these leaks, he's like, he's just mumbling and making up words because he's trying to find a cadence. He's trying to find a rhythm and melody that works with it and sounds good. Then later you go on and fill in the blanks, right? And that's what Buzz was trying to do. But when he got into the studio that day, Kurt Cobain, the man himself, was there. And he looked at him and said, hey, you know what? Just go into the booth and just record those. And he had them printed out. Let's read those lyrics for you guys, shall we? Let's get this going. So, lyrics, Melvins. Los tic a toe rest, might like a sender do re. You make a doll a ray day sender, bright like a penalty. Then it goes into the heavy part. Exercise my ray day. Obviously it sounds good when he's actually singing it with the music, but it's like, 'cause I can afford a readied, only street a wide a ridge land, and I'm singing along to it, and I'm not even trying to. You know why? This is why I feel like these lyrics kind of work, because they're like that weird work in progress, where it's like your mind can kind of fill in the blanks. I wrote down, it sounds like a dream, but that's not right. It's like your mind can kind of fill in the blanks as to what is actually being said. And it works, right? Especially because, well, I was going to say, the vocals aren't hard to hear, but I think, especially on Hooch, they're not. They're fairly easy to hear. But not many make sense, right? But some of them as well do have interpretive meanings. Like, listen, I'm listening to like every single song from this record, and I'm Googling song meaning for song because I don't know what it is, and no one's going to explain it from the band, so you have to listen to fans. I have a funny story about that. I'm just going to get into this right now. I have a little more written down. I don't have that much more written down, but I have a little more written down and then talk a little bit more about their stuff and then move on to Melmit. But here's the thing, right? Here's the thingamabob with this, okay? I look at these song meanings, and it is so frustrating, okay? Listen, set me straight Melvin's meaning, okay? Set me straight Melvin's meaning. So, the first one, songfacts.com. So you scroll down, and there is no lyrical interpretation, but this is a fairly reputable website, right? The facts, copyrighted, Songfacts is copyrighted apparently, is that, okay, this is the track from Houdini. It's their 5th album, by the way. I forgot to say that. It's their 5th album. And he's talking about how he, Buzz Osborne was talking about where he had written it. The song Set Me Straight was actually written in like 1983 or in the 80s, one of his first songs he'd written. Or something like that. He likes it. It's pretty simple. He was pretty new playing the guitar at the time. He started when he was 18. He said pretty late for them. Pretty late for most people. because he said, almost immediately I realized that playing cover songs wasn't going to get me anywhere. Even though we play a lot of cover songs, you have to write songs. That came out good. I do think the song came out good, but it's a lot simpler, more, I don't know, punk rocky, like more of like a standard alt rocky. It's more cohesive. I like that song a lot because of that. Also, the mixing is different. Anyways, you go to this website called oldtimemusic.com, and it's written by Greg Cook. And when you click on that, there's nothing. Old Time Music is proud to have such a passionate and talented team. We hope you enjoyed the articles and insights. And there's a bunch of things like, okay, guitar. You have a bunch of things like that. And you look at these people, they have nothing going on. And they're all kind of like stock images. I could probably Google these. There's no photos of people writing this stuff. But here you go. We already have a problem with this article. And I want you to think about it, if you know this band, and pick out the 3 things that are wrong with this, okay? Set Me Straight is a captivating song by the American rock band Melvins, released in 1996 as part of their album Stoner Witch. Okay, maybe 2 things. I don't know why I said 3. But here are the 2 things. 1, the song was released in 1993. Actually, no, there are 3 things. 2, the album was not Stoner Witch, but Houdini. And 3, Stoner Witch was released in 1994. I might be wrong here. Let's just make sure I'm right here. Yes, October 18th, 1994. You know what released in 1996? Stag, the final album from Atlantic Records. So either, I don't know, I just hate these sort of websites. Because I bet you, I haven't looked into the website too much, but I know this is off topic. I know I'm very certain that if I look into this website was probably created in the last year and a half, maybe max. And there are 2 possibilities. Either my boy, Colonel General Patrick Thomas, Gerald Patrick Thomas, what does that stand for? ChatGPT wrote this stupid article in the rest of this website, or they contracted it to some guy on Fiverr who doesn't know anything and didn't do any research, which is fine. Get your money, right? There's a lot of contracting on Fiverr nowadays. I have a friend who does this, and was doing this to make money, basically shoveling content onto the internet, just shoveling SEO optimized poop on the internet, ruining Google searches. There are studies you can look up, academic studies you can find that have basically backed up what I'm saying, is that the quality of searching on this biggest search engine, the one that's paid, that Apple, or that they pay billions of dollars to phone manufacturers like Apple. I'm pretty sure Google pays some crazy amount of billions of dollars every year to make sure Google is the default search engine on an iPhone, right? Because what are you going to do, a Bing? Come on, man. Who uses Bing? Anyways, in that it's all just LLM, generative AI, trite. And you go on Twitter and you see people flexing about this, we can optimize your website. I get messages from people on LinkedIn, the other just hole and despair of the internet. And you just see this stuff and you're just I know that you're just going to ChatGPT, SEO, pay, get keywords, whatever, to get it to the top of the ranking, and not actually spend some time and create high quality content, just copying what other people said and what the internet scraper scraped out in OpenAI's databases several years ago and fills up this database. I'm not even fully against generative AI stuff. I use ChatGPT sometimes. I try my hardest not to, because I know what comes out of it is straight dookie sometimes, a lot of the time, and I can tell when something is written by it and someone hasn't taken the time to force it to act like it's not just this, as an AI, I cannot do this. You can look up as an AI or whatever, OpenAI and stuff on Twitter, and you can see hundreds of bot accounts. Everything is that. And you really think the main man himself, the Mac Daddy of buying Twitter, was going to stop the bots? It got worse. That's a stupid aside, but it's something I get really passionate about. And this Melvins research, whatever, for this review brought it back up. So, stop SEO farming dumping on actual information on what is one of the greatest achievements in the last century for humankind, information and connecting us. That's all. Okay. Last few things. I think this album was drop D tuning. There's some pretty strange chords sometimes, heavy distortion and feedback, dissonant. The production sounds noisy, sharp, sometimes it clips, but it's very loud and expansive, especially on songs like Hooch, and Night Goat. Everything feels just huge, drenched in reverb. It's so heavy, and you're just like, oh, it's amazing. But I'll say this, okay? I feel like it falls off pretty hard on the second half. When Sky Pup comes out, I sort of just tune out. It's because the thing is with the Melvins is this, okay? You're going to have a very, very inconsistent time. You are very guaranteed not to like a lot of the stuff that you end up listening to from these guys. But you are going to like a lot of it. Maybe not a lot. You are going to like some of it, and the stuff that you do like, they're going to have a lot of it. So if you're interested in more atmospheric noise experiments or whatever, they got something like that. You want straight rockers, they got something like that. You want doom sludge metal with crazy, just beautiful riffage. You want something like Black Sabbath played at like a 16th of the speed, or 16 times this. I don't know the math on this. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. You know what I mean? Super slow. You got that. You got a lot of stuff. And I do like Houdini, but I will say, from my personal listening, it's hard for me to keep listening to it a lot of the time because I don't know. I'm like, give me Hooch over and over again. Give me Night Goat. Give me Honey Bucket. Give me Set Me Straight. And then after Sky Pup, I'm like, whatever. And the final track, Spread Eagle Beagle, being like a 10-minute long, pretty slow meandering drum solo is just another strange decision to do. But I mean, hey. And I'll say this the last thing, and then I think I'm going to go ahead play Set Me Straight and, have to re-disclaim y'all for the fact that this is a public show and disclaimer for that. But I'll say this, okay? Seems like the label wasn't doing too much crazy stuff. I think Oliver himself said, talking about how he wrote Revolve, which is my favorite song. It's not on this one. It's on Stone Ridge. It's the most standard one and one of their biggest. I'll say this about it. He said, I thought we had a pretty good single with that, but they just didn't do anything with it. And the other thing he said was basically this. He said a lot of artists, I like listening to him talk from what I've heard. He seems to be a fairly down-to-earth, straight up, tells it like it is. People online are always bitter because I guess Dave Grohl got famous and he didn't, but he put Dave Grohl and Nirvana on. He put Kurt Cobain onto a lot of this stuff apparently. It's a weird mix of all's well that ends well. I mean, he's probably making enough. He's living his life. He's got probably decent money. He's just making his albums and making the stuff he wants to do and just play the guitar. That's all he wanted to do. Anyways, he was like, okay, so the one thing that a lot of artists do, we specifically were decided we tried not to, was don't tell the label, how can you get us famous? We want to be well. What can you do to help me be successful? Because then the label's going to do a lot of stuff. And I think the interviewer, then Buzz kind of agreed, oh yeah, that's what Nirvana wanted to do with Nevermind, which I do kind of agree with. I mean, the original rougher mix by Butch Vig for that album, they actually were like, no, we want it with the more polished, radio-friendly stuff. Andy Wallace, the really good mixer, does a lot of stuff. So, I mean, yeah. I don't blame it, but this is an example of a band that's just doing their own thing, got a nice little following going for them, putting out albums whenever they feel like it, and having fun along the way. So I respect that highly, and I do think you guys should check out Melvins. Start with Houdini, Stoner Witch, and Lysol. I liked some of the stuff I heard off it. Just click shuffle, honestly. You can just click shuffle on it, and you'll hear a lot of different stuff. Or start from the beginning, or do whatever you want, because I'm not the arbiter of what I want you to do. I'm just telling you how I feel. I also like A History of Drunks from a Senile Animal, and also Boris from Bullhead. That's a cool one. That's written by his cat. Anyways, this has been the first half of Bass Tunes, KCI 8.9 FM in Irvine. You want to check me out on any social media platforms. There's BASEDTUNESKUCI on Instagram. If you want to check that out, follow me. You'll be hearing what the next episode is. I don't know what it is yet because the topic that I thought I was, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. Maybe not able. Don't think I want to. So, hey. And also got a website. You want to check out more of the content and stuff? basedari.com, basedari.com. It's a beautiful, beautiful website. I'm planning on redoing it with Bootstrap CSS frameworks, mostly for a class assignment, but it might look nicer, although it's kind of challenging to get to work right. Anyways, the views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of KUCI, its management, or the UC Board of Regents. You want to find out more about that? Go to kuci.org. Enjoy Set Me Straight by Melvins. When we come back, we're going to talk about helmets meantime, and then we're going to close it out. Thank you all for listening to this point. Shout out to all of you.